And I think increasingly you're going to see governments, central banks, monetary authorities stepping in to regulate these entities, these cryptos. And once you begin to do that, many of them will not be able to stand scrutiny. Having said all of that, a couple may very well survive because the technology on which many of them operate, blockchain, I believe is here to stay. So I want to make a distinction between cryptos, cryptocurrencies, and the blockchain. People confuse Bitcoin and blockchain. They're two different things. Bitcoin is the currency, blockchain is the road, the highway on which you put whatever currency, whatever you call it. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, they are all on a particular highway, in this case blockchain. So I think blockchain is here to stay. But I do not believe many of these cryptos will survive. Having said all of that, ask yourself the following questions. If you still want to do it, because I know some of you want to do it, some of you are doing it right now. I have people in my own church come to me and say, Governor, I'm investing in cryptos. What do you think? By the way, they've already invested there, but they're asking me what I think. And typically I say to them, is this currency regulated? No, it's not. What do you really know about cryptos? Not a whole lot, but I know I could make some money, maybe. Okay? And then I ask the question, can you afford to lose this money? Can you afford to lose this money? Because the truth is, some people have actually made a profit, but many people have lost money. And so I caution people, if you want to do it, and you want to speculate, go ahead, but don't put in more than you could afford to lose. And by the way, do not borrow. Do not borrow to make this investment, because you're speculating. You may not get back your money. Once you understand all of the things I've just said, go right ahead if you want to. So you have to be careful is all I'm saying. But I also want to say before we move on that while people obviously are looking at cryptos because cryptos is the rage or the buzz at the moment, there is a basis, I think, for more investment in the money and capital markets. Here's why. In the United States, 1 in 2 US citizens are invested in the US stock market. 1 in 2. That's 50%. A lot of average Americans, ordinary Americans, create wealth from investing in the stock market. You come to the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, and that number is 1 in 25. A very small number. And therefore, my point, Fiona, is that more people should consider investing in the Eastern Caribbean securities market. Now, you're not going to get 10 and 20 and 100% return, but you could certainly get better than you probably could get from your 2% at the bank, and certainly there are other opportunities that you can look into. So I do encourage people to look at investing, but in cryptos, be very careful.
Very interesting perspective there, Governor. Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry for going on so long, but it's a very good question you asked.
That's fine. I appreciate that. So I know as well that you are a very strong advocate for digital transformation and the use of digital technologies.
Yes.
What can we do here on Montserrat to better leverage digital technologies for financial gains?
So Montserrat is a small island developing state. Very small island developing state. And even with your God-given land, you're only at the moment allowed to use a third because of the volcano. So the way we think about digital transformation is that it is a great leveler or the great equalizer. Small states like Montserrat and members of our currency union have a fighting chance to compete in the world to make a living in the global economy through the digital economy. The numbers indicate that the global economy is becoming increasingly digital. Some estimates suggest that by 2025, at least 25% of the global economy will be digital. That is an unstoppable force. So we have to decide in Montserrat and across our currency union whether and to what extent we are going to be a player in this digital economy. Because to the extent that we are, we can find a niche and make a living. And as I always say, and I repeat this evening, in this digital economy, we must not be mere consumers. We have to be producers. Very, very important. Any one of us can go on the internet and go on Amazon and click, click, and buy. That's consumption. How many of us are selling something on Amazon? That's production. You see my difference?
Yes,
so what I'm saying is that we have to be positioned to be able to tap the digital economy. A Montserrat should be able to stay here in Montserrat and sell to any part of the world because he or she is connected to the digital economy. There's absolutely no way we're going to survive in this global economy if we don't go digital. And so that is why we make the push, because we believe we have to position our youth, position our economies to take advantage of these emerging opportunities.
Yeah.
And for example, just to make it clear, whether you're doing something like digital marketing, you're doing digital engineering, you're doing graphic design, you're doing website, social media work, coding, there are a range of possibilities for young people and others in this digital economy to make a living right here in Montserrat. And that's what we want to see more of. So there's less dependence on the government to create a job, and less people have to leave Montserrat to find a job. Tap into the digital economy, and you can do it from your island home. That's what we want to see.
As we're speaking about the digital economy, ECCB launched Dcash, the digital currency, on Montserrat in December of last year, 2021. What was the rationale and what next for Dcash here?
So for us, the rationale for digital currency was a clear understanding, like I just said, that the global economy is becoming more and more digital. We have to position the region. And therefore, we wanted to ensure that as part of the build-out of a digital economy, we have a digital currency, fully backed by our central bank, issued by our central bank for the people of the currency union. I have said, and I repeat this evening, the payment system should work for all except illicit actors. Right now, this payment system is not working for the small man and woman. It's too expensive, too slow, too much hoops to jump through. And so we believe we have to find a faster way, and Dcash is faster, safer, cheaper. We launched in December. We had a setback in January with an outage which was resolved. We're almost ready to roll out in Anguilla. In fact, this is June. We're going to be rolling out in Anguilla this month. And then you're going to see some significant marketing. Because one of the things we did not do, ought to have done, but we were busy with some other things and so on. And in fact, we recognized we needed to bring in some help. So we are now recruiting a marketing partner to help us to market Dcash. So people of Montserrat expect to hear a lot more about Dcash, including incentives for signing up and getting on board in the next few weeks and months. And then we want to make sure with all 8 countries on board, we really ratchet up, ramp up the marketing around Dcash. So stay tuned, you're going to hear a lot more coming soon.
Yes, and we'll continue the discussion after a few minutes. You are watching Conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. We now invite you, our audience, to join the conversation. Send your questions via WhatsApp to 664-496-6875 or via the GIU and ECCB Connect's Facebook and YouTube pages. Stay with us. We'll take your questions after this break.
Do you own or manage a business? Interested in saving time and money? How about expanding your business? Then the Dcash Merchant app is for you. Receive digital EC payments instantly from Dcash customers anywhere via your smart device. Create invoices and track transactions easily in the app. And avoid the hassle of handling physical cash. Visit dcashec.com today for more information and to sign up. Dcash, the digital version of your EC dollar.
Timothy, NJ, Antoine. We are now taking your questions. 496-6875, that's the number to call or send your WhatsApp messages to. And remember, you can also send your comments and questions on the GIU and ECCB Connect's Facebook pages or on our YouTube channels. In the meantime, Governor, we'll continue our conversation and we'll take the calls as they come in. So one of the points you mentioned based on your discussions so far with officials here is the concern surrounding correspondent banking. So Montserrat, we are in a unique situation in that we only have one bank, and that is our indigenous bank. Our only international bank would have left last year. And the issue we're having is that there's no correspondent bank. Why is it taking so long to resolve this issue for the Bank of Montserrat?
Well, in fairness to the Bank of Montserrat, it is not the fault of the Bank of Montserrat. I think we have to be very clear about that. I know the board and management of the Bank of Montserrat are working to secure better possibilities in that regard. I know the government of Montserrat is involved in doing what it can in terms of advocacy around this issue. The real issue, Fiona, is a size issue. It is a size issue. Bank of Montserrat is a small bank by international standards. And so many of the correspondent banks have made it very clear in the past that they do not want to do business with very small banks. It's not very profitable for them, and they deem it as high risk. It's, as far as they're concerned, high risk, low reward. And that's why they made some of those decisions. Now, interestingly, in some other parts of the currency union, some of the indigenous banks that were under some pressure, those pressure have eased in part because they acquired some of the Canadian banks, whether it is RBC or Scotia. So because they're larger, they've been able to maintain multiple correspondent banks. Some have two, some have three. So I know the work is ongoing to find one. I believe that as we continue to improve on our AML-CFT work across the region, that may help. But ultimately, I think the answer lies in some kind of collaboration between Bank of Montserrat and another indigenous bank. I'm not necessarily saying they have to merge. I'm simply saying there has to be a mechanism for them to be able to work together to get that access for the people of Montserrat. Because I understand the concern. It's your one bank, you want to do international transactions, you're handicapped.
Yes.
And I know that is a major concern. It's something the Premier has raised with me repeatedly. It's something that I know the Bank of Montserrat is looking into. What we have encouraged the indigenous banks to do, including the Bank of Montserrat, is to pursue a shared services model for risk and compliance to assist them with lowering their unit costs. Because part of the challenge for a small bank like Bank of Montserrat is some of the investments that need to be made, you're making it on a population base of less than 5,000. Banking is an expensive business. So if they were to lower some of these costs, then they could improve their profitability and put them in a better position to make certain investments. But to answer your question, we are also actively looking to see what partners could be found. But we have to urge patience for the people of Montserrat because it is a size problem. If you look at the Canadian banks, let me just close with that. Even though they were making profit in our region, many of them, most of them, in most countries, if not all, they are still leaving. Why? Because they can make much more profit in Jamaica or in the Bahamas or in Mexico than they could in the Eastern Caribbean. And people in those boardrooms are making decisions based on what they think is going to be most profitable. They're not concerned about the concern that you and I have about correspondent banking relation. They're concerned about the bottom line. So I want to again say that we truly understand the difficulty and the consternation, the concern of the people of Montserrat around this issue. We're prepared to continue to look at options. We continue to advocate with correspondent banks to give access to Montserrat and Anguilla, for example, to our two smallest members, and we have to continue to fight that fight.
Okay. Let's take this comment or question from our viewer. Montserrat rolled out Dcash, yet Digicel won't accept payments from the platform. My question is, why can't Digicel take payments?
I don't know the answer. I'm going to look into that. So whoever raised it, thanks for bringing it to my attention. I was not aware that Digicel is not accepting payments. I'm going to look into that. And if you could send us an email via info@eccb.org, info@eccb.org. Whoever sent the question, we'll give you an answer via email. But thanks for raising it. We'll look into it.
Right. Let us discuss very quickly the Eccb and how the Eccb has been able to maintain the stability of the EC dollar to the US dollar for so many years at 2.7 to 1.
So for the benefit of our younger viewers and listeners, the EC dollar has been pegged to the US dollar, 1 US, 2.7 EC since 1976, July 1976. And we've been able to maintain the strength of that dollar by maintaining a high level of foreign reserves. So when we made the decision, founders, framers, to have a common currency and to back it, it was also agreed that we want to have a strong dollar. And every governor, successive governor, I'm the third in that line, we have stayed committed to that cause, to maintain a high level of reserves. Because that is how the currency is backed. In the past, we've been criticized for having too much reserves. But the reality is that we've always seen reserves as an insurance policy. And you never know how much you need it until you have a crisis. You have a shock. And that's what we've had with COVID, for example. The reality is that when we started the pandemic, the backing was at around 100%. Even in the face of no tourism, the backing has not gone below 93%. What does the law require us to be at? 60%. So we maintain a very high backing. And that is why, notwithstanding all the problems that we have in the world and in the currency union, we're not concerned, or one of the problems we do not have is the stability of our dollar. Our dollar is strong, and I think it's a testament to the people of our currency union that when we come together as small states with common cause, collective action, we can do great things. This is a tremendous achievement by a group of small states, and many people continue to look at what we've done with admiration, that we've been able to sustain all crises, hurricanes, global financial crisis, pandemic, whatever, and still maintain the strength of our dollar. But that's how we do. We keep very strong foreign reserves.
Very good.
Which means, so just let me just explain one more thing on that.
Good.
It means, for example, we cannot print money or what in economics, basically lend to governments wantonly and recklessly. If we did that, that money would end up as imports and would leak foreign exchange out of the currency union. So we do lend to governments, but we have limits. And unlike some countries that do not observe limits, our central bank does. And that is why we've been able to maintain the currency and the foreign reserves for so long.
Very good, Governor. You are watching Conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. We invite you to call or send your questions to 664-496-6875 or via the GIU and ECCB Connect's Facebook pages and YouTube channels. Governor, small island developing states such as Montserrat, we face the issue of brain drain, where our young and talented individuals look to larger metropolitan countries for opportunities that are not available in small island states. What can we do as a region to address the issue of brain drain? And even here in Montserrat, what can we do to address that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a difficult challenge. Because I've always contended that notwithstanding the important level, significant remittances that we get from our people who have migrated, those remittances cannot compensate for the loss of critical skills. In other words, were we able to keep these people home, our economies will develop even faster. The money is useful. Continue to send the money, please. We need it. But it is not the same as being able to contribute those skills. In the case of Montserrat, it is a particularly difficult thing because, obviously, of the circumstances around the volcano. At one point in time, your population was at 12,000. Yeah, it's now just under 5,000. You're only able to use about a third of the island. So people have had to leave to seek opportunities. What I hope is that with the rise of the digital economy, new opportunities will be found. New opportunities will be found for people to work from Montserrat and make a living. So for example, in coding, I'm told there are people who are making $3,000 a month from coding. You don't have to be in the US or the UK to make that money. If you have those skills, you could operate in Montserrat. Now, obviously, it requires us to have good and reliable connectivity, because digital economy requires connectivity. So that's why they work on the fiber optic cable. It's very, very important work. Very, very important. So I was pleased to see that. And of course, we have to continue to expand the network and so on. But that potentially can bring more people into Montserrat, or at least have them work out of Montserrat. And that is one way. If people see that they can work from their island home and make money by working for companies in the United States or the US, some of the remote working that we see now, for example, that is a niche area. You get 1,000 of these people in Montserrat, that's a big number. That's a big number. That would be a 20% increase or thereabouts. So I mean, you just think about what that could do if you have the right setup. And I think that is going to be part of how we try to address that. Because we are going to always be faced with our small size, but if we can create those opportunities through the digital platform, I think that's the best chance of being able to get more people to work from home or to come back home and work from Montserrat.
You've mentioned the remote working program, and the digital nomad or remote working program was made popular during the COVID-19 pandemic, with many of the islands implementing programs to stimulate economic activity. Montserrat also implemented a remote working program. Based on your assessment, was this program successful, not only in Montserrat, but across the member states?
Well, we're trying to put together some numbers on that, so it's a little early still for us to give you a definitive answer to that. I do know that Barbados has had some success with what they call their welcome stamp. But of course, Barbados has the advantage of not just being larger, but having the connections, the international connections, flights, for example. from the US and Europe almost on a daily basis. So I know Barbados has benefited. There are a few other countries, like you said, that have introduced the programs, but we are still trying to get data around the actual impacts. And, but what we do know is that this whole idea of working from home or remote working is here to stay in some form or fashion. And so because of that, even as we hopefully are at the back end of the pandemic, we could see people continue to use this as an opportunity because they now have the flexibility of where they want to work. Because even for us at ECCB, I will tell you that having worked from home for 2 years, we officially returned to office in April. We have now adopted a hybrid model. And it's essentially 3 days in, 2 days out. You work 2 days in the office, you do 2 days at home. And by the way, if you want to work all 5 days in the office, you are welcome to do that. We won't say no to that. But people want the flexibility. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that because that hybrid model is now, I believe, here to stay in the world of work, it presents an opportunity. The same way all people are benefiting from it. So we have people from 8 member countries. At times, they will be working from their home country for the central bank. And at times, they will be working in St. Kitts. That's fine. They did it for 2 years. Many of them we had people who were working in the US, working in Canada, working in Grenada, working in St. Vincent, wherever their home country. They traveled and worked. We believe that that opportunity can now be flipped to benefit our people. So to answer your question, too early to give you definitive. We know anecdotally in Barbados there's been some success, but we need to gather the data to better understand the actual impact.
Sure. Youth development and the fact that young people are basically, in a digital age. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask about the ECCB and what does the ECCB currently do to support young people as it relates to, youth development and so forth.
Well, good question. Get excited about young people. So one of the things that we do several programs. A couple is what we call the Bright Sparks. Bright Sparks program is really a program where we bring interns in IT interns to the bank. So in most cases, they're just finishing up A-levels. They have some kind of background in IT. They probably want to go on to do a career in IT or STEM. And we bring them to the bank for 6 months. We give them training, job opportunity, practical experience, job training. And of course, we give them a stipend. We started this program in 2017. And so far, we have had, I think, about 10 or 12 Bright Sparks. We do not yet have someone from Montserrat. And when I spoke to the cabinet earlier today, I did indicate that we're keen to see some young boy or girl get an opportunity to come to the central bank as a Bright Spark. So that's one example. It's very practical and so on. And by the way, some of them, we've actually kept them on staff as well. Sometimes they're going off to university, so they work for a year or two, and then they move on. They get the exposure. Of course, we want them to come back and contribute to Montserrat. That's important. That's important.
It is.
Secondly, we offer what we call a SPICE scholarship. So every year, with the Caribbean Science Foundation, there is this program in Barbados for about 6 weeks, preparing students who want to pursue a career in STEM or STEAM. In many cases, they have finished their levels and they're getting ready to go on to university. They get training in coding, they get training in data analytics in the STEM area. They get training with helping prepare the applications for Ivy League universities. We have MIT professors and other very highly credentialed professors who work with the team. And every year we fund 2 students from the ECCU to go to Barbados for that program. The last year or 2 it was online, now it's back in person. So again, we want to see young Montserratians benefit from that program. We also provide through our corporate relations department, and Shrimalan Kirby is our director, a children's hour. And I mentioned children's hour because this children's hour is really intended to engage the children of the ECCU, give them exposure to financial literacy. So this is a radio program on Saturdays, I think between 11 and 1 or 2, somewhere, depends on the time, depending on the station and the location, where we engage our children. Children's Connection, Children's Hour. That is another opportunity we have. And then, of course, we do other things like essay competitions, and we had a creative writing competition. What else have we? So we look for ways to engage our young people. In addition to that, we have these mentorship schools. So in each island, we have a mentorship school. In Montserrat, it's the Braids Primary. We weren't able to do much in the pandemic, but typically, we would engage the students, especially those at the Form 4, Form 5 level, transition into secondary school. We would give them skills. We would teach them financial literacy. We would life skills, motivational talks, and that sort of thing. Support them, maybe some computers, those sorts of things. So we look for practical ways to support young people who want to give them a vision of the region. And we want to give them a sense of what's possible for themselves and their families. And we want them to feel connected to the region and committed to making a difference for your region. To come back and serve. To build in your country, in your island home. That's important, because if we keep training them, we had a conversation earlier about the brain drain.
Yeah.
If we keep training them to go out and nobody comes back, what do we have? So we try to inculcate in them this regional mindset, this development. Those are the sorts of things we try to work with them on. So those are just top of mind, a few of the things that we do with children and youth in the currency union. Maybe not very well known, but increasingly we're trying to make sure everybody understands these are opportunities at ECCB.
Very extensive list of programs for young people. There's a question here from one of our viewers, but let's take this caller first. Good evening, caller. You're live on Conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. We can take your question now. Good evening, caller.
Question for the Governor. It's about Dcash, and you were saying that it's not accepted for illicit activity. However, some activity on the other islands were not considered illicit, are considered illicit in Montserrat, such as gambling and cannabis. Now, if one of the other islands has a business which their Montserrat wants to invest, how does the ECCB consider those legal ramifications when money is now to be sent back to Montserrat from an activity that Montserrat consider to be illicit?
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard the question clearly. Caller, thank you for calling. I got the feeling he was asking about activities that may be legal in some countries but not in others.
Yes.
Like medicinal cannabis or marijuana.
Yeah. And gambling.
And gambling. So obviously, if they are illegal, the ECCB cannot support or be part of that. And I know there's only, one country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that has formally passed legislation for medicinal marijuana. They're developing an industry. I know Antigua, I think, has decriminalized some portions, small portions. St. Kitts is talking about building an industry, but that's still at the early stage. So I can't offer any more because I didn't quite hear the question, but my basic response would be, if it's illegal, obviously, we have no part in that. If it's a legal activity, clearly, then a payment system can be used for an activity that's permissible in a particular country. But the medicinal marijuana is still very, very early days, to be honest, in the currency union. And perhaps I'll stop here because I want to make sure I'm answering the question, and that's what I picked up.
Yeah.
I may have missed a couple of things there, and had I heard it clearer, maybe I could have given a more fulsome response.
Yeah. Let's take this question from a contributor. The Bank of Montserrat doesn't issue Dcash. Why isn't the Bank of Montserrat? Why is the Bank of Montserrat not on board?
Right. So Bank of Montserrat, I expect will come on board. The truth is that some of our indigenous banks were very busy, quite busy, with the migration having purchased the RBC operations. And I know, for example, I can tell you that Republic, for example, just to give an example, which acquires Scotia, has recently come to us and said, we are now ready to start bringing on Dcash. So we want to get, and they've given us a very ambitious timetable to get Dcash going. But they had said to us last year, hold on, because we're still working on the migration of the Scotia accounts to Republic. And I think Bank of Montserrat is also working through that transition of the RBC portfolio. I know it's also working on a new ATM and so on. So Bank of Montserrat will get there. But I think we have to be patient because don't underestimate the work it takes to acquire a bank. It's a lot of work. Just ask the staff and the management of Bank of Montserrat. So I expect Bank of Montserrat. NCBA, for example, is also coming on board shortly, but they had initially said they needed time. So just be patient. They'll come.
Okay, we'll take this caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on Conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. We'll take your question now.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Smith, and good night, Governor Antoine.
Good evening.
Eccb Montserrat. Welcome home. Welcome to our home.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to have two interactions with you, two questions for you. And the first one is, what is the central bank doing with respect to the regulation of the money transfer agencies that operate in our region? And I'm being specific again tonight about Montserrat. The money transfer agencies, I don't know if we actually have any regulation going for them, so I would want you to speak to that. And my second question is about our CLICO issue. I think it is very, very long overdue. In fact, I am very disappointed that we allowed, and notice I'm saying we allowed CLICO to have shafted the poor people in our region, because I know that the central bank was responsible for monitoring the operations of insurance companies. So that should have never happened. Yet they are dragging their feet, and they've put so many persons out of pocket. Some people have actually died without knowing what will happen to their investment. I know recently they gave us back a little check, for premiums that was sitting in an account here that people would have been paying in. Speaking on it personally myself, it affected my funding for my children's education, because you plan, you tighten your belt and you do these things and you prepare, and then it blew up into your in your face that you're still waiting for a resolution. They did not even give back any interest on the premiums that they would have held for several years. The monies were earning interest, so you don't give back just the premiums. They should have at least given a 1% interest on the monies, because they would have been collecting interest on that account. So those are some real issues. So I really want some frank talk from you, honest talk on those issues. The monitoring of what is happening with money transfers outside of our economies, because most of those transfers they're not going to sister islands. They're going outside of the Eccb area. And I think that is a terrible leakage, in my opinion. And I know that to be so from a financial standpoint as well. And I really want you to deal with the issue about CLICO. I think it is time that it is finalized.
Right.
Because
I got you.
it has hurt the poor people of our region. Thank you, sir.
Right, right. Thanks for calling. And so let me start with the money service business, the first question. So just to be clear, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank does not regulate money service businesses, does not. I believe that falls to the Financial Service Commission here in Montserrat. So I cannot speak to that because that is not something that is regulated by the Eccb. What I will add, however, is that as part of ensuring we have a stronger financial system, the Eccb and all the regulators in the currency union, all the regulators, including the FSC in Montserrat, are engaged in discussions about what we call an optimal regulatory framework. And I will simply say we are working on setting up a regional standard setting body that will provide oversight for all the financial regulators in the ECCU so that we have common standards across the entire currency union. So not only do we have a common banking law and a common regulator, a single regulator for banking, we want to be able to ultimately have some kind of regional standard setting body for all financial sector activities. So that means money service business will get some kind of oversight under that body when it is established. On the question of CLICO, let me be very clear. The ECCB never supervised insurance companies, never. Again, insurers are supervised by the Financial Service Commission here in Montserrat or by the, whatever they call in the various countries, member countries. ECCB is responsible for banks, not insurers or insurance companies, credit unions, money service businesses. All of those things are handled at the national level by the Financial Services Commission. Now, on the question of the CLICO payment, where are we now? As you know, most of the assets for CLICO were held either in Barbados or in St. Lucia. Very little in the rest of the currency union. As a consequence of that, there were very little assets that we could put our hands on to dispose of for the benefit of our policyholders. Barbados, where most of the assets were held, took care of their policyholders. The Monetary Council, got involved not because ECCB regulates insurers, but because this was a major issue of concern for the people of the currency union. And the Monetary Council, the finance ministers, most of whom are prime ministers, premier, took it up. Barbados finally, after much representation on our part, recently agreed to make 37 million Barbados dollars available for the policyholders of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Barbados also indicated, while it was making these funds available because it recognized the need to make some kind of contribution, it has its own challenges, and everybody knows Barbados is in an IMF program. Therefore, Barbados indicated these monies will be issued to the ECCU policyholders in the form of a bond or in bonds. Not cash, bonds. The governments, therefore, are now looking to see whether and to what extent a way can be found to cash these bonds or convert them into cash, obviously at some kind of discount, or to give the policyholders an option to decide, I am going to take my bond and wait for 15 or 20 years to get my interest, to get my principal, and with some interest paid through that time of 1%, I think 1.5%, 2.5% over that period of time, or whether or not you're going to, if possible, take some cash if we can sell the bond to someone who is prepared to give us cash. So you will hear more about that shortly because that is now being finalized with the government of Barbados. But I repeat, $37 million, about 40 million EC, bonds, not cash, to be made available. The idea is that policyholders will then have in their hand a bond that will pay them interest over 15, 20 years. I think it's 15 years if I recall, 15 years I believe. Or if we can find some way to sell that bond and convert it to cash, cash. Now obviously, because people have been waiting for so long, this is 13 years, since 2009, we want to be able to find ways to put cash in hand. And as you rightly said, some people have died and not gotten any justice. And there are people like yourself who are still waiting for some kind of relief. What I will end by saying is that this issue continues to occupy the attention of the Monetary Council. The Premier is the current chairman of a Monetary Council, and he will tell you at every meeting of this Monetary Council, February, July, and October, a report comes on BICO and CLICO. So I just want you to know, while it's been very slow going in recent times, this is a matter that continues to occupy the attention of the Monetary Council. And so we'll continue to push forward and see if we can find some ways. But the next step in CLICO is the bond coming over and then putting it in your hand, giving you an option to either hold the bond and get some interest, or if you can find somebody to buy it, then to convert it into some cash.
Okay, we have 2 more questions before we wrap up the discussion here tonight. Can a Dcash account take international payments, or are they confined to just ECCU countries?
At this point, it is confined to ECCU countries, and it's in EC dollars. If somebody is in the United States or the United Kingdom, they can have a Dcash account, but it will be in EC dollars. So in other words, they'll have to draw from their bank here to send money to their family or to pay or whatever in the currency union, any of the 8 countries. So we're not dealing with US dollars. Now, I think the person is probably wondering, well, are we considering that? That is a possibility at a later stage, but it requires collaboration across countries, cross-border payments with other central banks. And there's a big discussion going on at the international level about how you can have central bank digital currencies connected and interoperable to be able to allow some of that kind of thing to happen. But right now, Dcash is for the 8 member countries in the currency union. Anywhere in those countries, within islands and between islands, you can move EC dollars back and forth, you can make payments. That is our starting point.
And our final question for this evening, what is the ECCB doing regarding the climate finance for its member countries?
Right, well, so the time has gone, we haven't talked a lot about that, but the reality is that we are very, very keen to see renewable energy in a very significant way in our countries. I think some of you know, but it's something we're very proud about, is the fact that at ECCB, 70% of our energy are generated from solar PV, and by the end of this year, it will be 100%. We get in our storage and it's actually being manufactured. We're very proud of that investment. Last year, we saved more than $1 million, $1.2 million. This year, the number is probably going to be higher because oil prices are higher. We want to see our member countries, Montserrat, for example, do more with renewables. You did your 750K solar plant, then I think you did another 250. We need to see more of that. So one of the things that ECCB is doing, in addition to encouraging and advocating for it, is that we are looking to mobilize resources. So we are engaged in discussion with the World Bank and others about how we can mobilize financing. How we see it is that we can use some climate finance, some resources from, say, the World Bank, some regional money, because our banks are awash with excess liquidity, and maybe the central bank itself may also chip in a little bit. But we want to put together a bundle to create a fund for renewable energy. You might say others are funding it, but the truth is not enough. If that were the case, we'd be further along with geothermal, we'd be further along with some of these investments. So we do believe, at this moment, when only 10% of our energy mix is coming from renewables, 10, 12%, we want to see how quickly we could triple that. So we have to invest in renewable energy. And that is one of the things that our central bank is doing through our sustainable finance push. And you will hear more about that as we develop that facility with the World Bank and other partners.
Certainly look forward to hearing more about that. Governor, that's all the time we have this evening. Your final comments as we wrap up this evening's conversation. Well,
I can't believe an hour has gone. I mean, we're just getting started. But I want to say that It's been a real pleasure, Fiona. Thanks for having me to engage with you and the people of Montserrat. And I want to say to the people of Montserrat, I know this is a difficult time for all of us, But let's be honest. We are far better together than trying to walk this road alone. And I hope that we will see the value increasingly in us coming together and working together to address some of these major challenges that we face. The first imperative for grappling with these issues is a growth mindset. We have to have the right mindset. And so I want to invite us all to come together as a region to work on these challenges. Because I believe, as we've seen with the EC dollar, when we come together, we can do great things. Thanks for having us. And I want to say to the people of Montserrat, we will continue to support you as best as we can. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Governor Antoine, thank you again for this very enlightening and in-depth conversation. Thank you to our listeners and viewers. I'm Fiona Alexander Smith, ending my conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy N.J. Antoine.